Beef on Netflix has got to be one of the most stressful shows I've ever seen. I can give it no higher praise. It's this popular comedy drama series about these two characters, Danny and Amy, who have a uniquely cathartic approach to dealing with their frustrations, starting a small-scale war between each other and ruining one another's lives in the process. Because what starts as a pretty understandable accident in a 4-store's parking lot quickly turns into the next iteration of the Fast and Furious. But the thing I really like about Beef is that it's not all show and no substance. Yes, some crazy stuff happens. People get shot, spouses cheat on each other, bathroom floors get peed on, and yes, it is all very entertaining to watch. But Beef takes time to explore its characters too. It's also got a perfect ending. It ties everything up in such a satisfying way that I was horrified to learn that there may be plans for more seasons. To some, this may seem like a small thing to complain about, but to me, it's honestly stressing me out about as much as the show itself. Now, why is this ending so perfect? And furthermore, why is this show so good at threatening my stomach lining with ulcers? Something that's done very intentionally, I might add, and executed very well. Let's dig in. First though, spoiler warning. This video is splattered with them like a Jackson Pollock painting, so if you care about such things, make like Amy in the first episode and get the heck out of here. Now, I think the best way to introduce this video is to talk about the show's characters and their extremely stressful lives. Danny works as this construction contractor guy, and when the show starts, he's far from being in the best of places. Money's hard to come by, his family's had to move back to Korea because their motel business failed, and he frequently misplaces receipts for things he's bought. The opening scene is of Danny trying to return a bunch of these hibachi grills that he's bought. He's standing there in the return line with all his stuff. The guy running the counter is calling attention to the fact that this is the third time he's tried to return all the grills. He's got 6 or 7 people behind him. They're starting to talk crap about how he's taking too long, and he's missing his receipt. We're not even 2 minutes in. Like, the button on the remote is still warm from when I selected this show over another mindless episode of Seinfeld. And I'm on my couch, under a blanket, with a box of Junior Mints. It's literally my favorite place in the world. I am never more at ease. But as I watched this scene, my toes scrunched. My toes only scrunch when I'm stressed. My theory is that it's some deeply ingrained reaction, probably written into my very DNA. A relic of a survival instinct left over from when my great 1.6 times 10 to the 5th power grandfather had to grip the baobab tree branch with his toes, else he fall into the jaws of a hyena. Basically, Beef's superb storytelling triggered a primal response from me. It's a pretty wild and extremely well done minute and 30 seconds, but folks, the show's not even warmed up yet. When Danny returns home, we're introduced to his brother, Paul. Even though he's got a pretty neat gaming setup with a mouse that looks like it was plucked from the far reaches of the galaxy. I mean, look at that thing. What's he got smashed in there? The freaking Space Infinity Stone? He keeps losing all his money on crypto. And what little he does make, he spends on jewelry. At one point, Paul claims that he spent like $2,000 on a gold necklace thing. $2,000? Dude, look at your walls. Look at them. Take that money and slap up some eggshell colored Dutch boy or something. You're telling me that you're okay with it looking like that? That ain't right, man. It's like they moved into the apartment while I was still in the process of being freaking insulated. Either that or they're intentionally going for that raw construction look, which actually does make sense considering Danny's line of work, but still, I don't like it. Makes me feel like I'm gonna step on a nail. Makes me feel like I'm in a Home Depot, which is a store I can never find anything in, and whose hot dog stands are never open, by the way. There's also a bit later in this episode where Danny goes out to a property he wants to buy for his parents, and I swear to God, it raises my blood pressure about as much as when I look at the box office revenues for one of those stupid Minion movies. So it goes like this. Danny's talking on the phone to the banker because he wants to make a down payment on the property, but they're not returning his calls, so he's just leaving a message after message. He's going through one after another, just like these long chicken sandwiches from Burger King that he's practically slurping down. I counted how many he eats in this scene. I think it's 5. When the scene opens, it looks like he's finishing up one, and he's also got an unfurled wrapper on the hood of his car, so 1. We see him unwrap a second. So dose. When he reaches into the bag for a third, we can clearly see that there are 2 left, both of which he eventually eats. Just for this video, I looked up the calorie count for this type of sandwich, and it's 625 calories. Multiply that by 5, and that's 3,125 calories. There's 170 grams of fat in those, like 2 to 3 times the amount you're supposed to have in a day. And he eats it all in like 12 and a half minutes. What the hell, Danny? You're gonna give yourself a coronary, man. Then his phone buzzes to notify him that Paul's cryptocurrency has dropped in value, losing him a relatively marginal sum of $17,415. But every time I watch this scene, that last bit doesn't even bother me that much because I'm too busy thinking about how I want Burger King. How Danny's chicken sandwich has reminded me how much I love their soft, crispy, problematic onion rings. My kryptonite. You know how whenever your dog or cat hears a loud noise, they snap to attention, like they're ready for Armageddon? That's me whenever Burger King's onion rings become part of the conversation. But every time I eat them, I feel bad. But they taste so good. But every time I eat them, my stomach feels like it wants to evacuate. But they taste so good. God, Danny, why? So Amy Lau is the other side of this chaos. While Danny and Paul are obsessing over cryptocurrency, Amy's busying herself where the money's really at. Plants, which should be relaxing, except she's got all this crap she's got to deal with. Like her employees spontaneously speaking foreign languages.
Gomennasai.
She also struggles to sell her husband's artwork in the shop, which I think is ridiculous because I actually, honest to God, think the blob sculptures are kind of good. Her husband, George, seems to be the butt of the joke in this show because his father was this famous artist and he himself is trying to follow in his footsteps. But everyone thinks he's this talentless failure whose work has virtually no artistic merit. Yet as I was watching the show, I found myself actually kind of digging their organic, abstract look. The way they have no defined edges, the way their shape just seems to flow. It relaxes me. Their presence in this show is a kind of oasis, a breath of fresh air in what's otherwise a bellowing hurricane. In the whole show, only 2 people show any interest in his art. Danny, who says the sculptures make him feel sad, and this criminal, who just thought it would be worth a lot of money. Mia also likes it, but she's also having an affair with George, so her opinion doesn't count to me. The criminal only likes it because he thinks it's fine art, which you know is notorious for looking crazy and not making much sense. For example, like that one time someone made nothing and sold it for $18,000. Literally, Salvatore Garou, that's his name, made an immaterial sculpture that instigated a bidding war. A bidding war. There was actual demand for this. You could have burned that $18,000 and it would have been of more use. Because at least you're getting heat and light. That's a 2-for-1 special. Basically what I'm getting at is that this criminal was insulting George's work, okay? So no one likes this stuff but me. To see this man's life work go unappreciated, it kills me inside. But I digress. So Amy's plant business is actually something of a success. It's generating enough money that this eccentric billionaire, Jordan, is actually interested in purchasing it. A woman who later gets crushed by a sliding door in what's definitively the most gruesome death in the entire show. The thing that stresses me out about this character, however, is how she's got this giant house with all this eccentric billionaire stuff in it, like chairs that look like they're made of diamonds, hats that animals probably died in the making of, and ruins from ancient civilizations that, should they fall into the hands of science, would probably, I don't know, solve the mysteries of human history. And yet she doesn't have one single piece of George's artwork. Not one! She is the demographic for this stuff. Come on! I think I'm gonna keep coming around to George because I'm hung up and I can't move on. So I'm going to take this opportunity to segue into another part of the show that also stresses me out, and that's the action sequences. So the incident that sets this whole story in motion takes place right out of the gates. As Danny's backing out of the 4 Stores parking lot, by the way, that is not a real place. They made that up for the show. He almost hits Amy. Rather than just apologize and get on with the day, it's suddenly an episode of Tom and Jerry Road Rage Edition. But one of the more stressful parts about this scene for me is that some of the hibachi grills in the back of Danny's truck, remember the ones he was going to return, they tumble out the back. That's a perfectly good grill he just destroyed. Another part that had my toes curling was when Danny was forcing himself to memorize Amy's license plate as she's driving away. It brings back trauma for me. from high school. We used to have these vocab tests in AP Lit every week, and I'd never study for them. Instead, I'd try to cram memorizing the definitions during lunch hour by creating mnemonic devices, which is basically just like making tricks to jog your memory. I'd have like 20 words to memorize and 50 minutes to do it. The word would be something like proclivity, which means to do something regularly. I would think of something like Cliv reminds me of Clive, which is a name. Ivity reminds me of activity, and pro means to be for something. So Clive is pro doing activities. It sounds so stupid, and it was. I never got higher than a 70 on those tests. Someone else at the lunch table would quiz me as I was coming up for the tricks to help me memorize the definitions, and I'm sure he thought I was out of my goddamn mind. Andrew, if you happen to be watching this, what's up, man? Ugh, even just talking about this is making my hands sweaty. Stop making these memories come back. Another stress-inducing action sequence takes place about halfway through the season after Paul steals Danny's truck to visit Amy in Las Vegas, a city where nothing bad ever happens. Danny is understandably a little less than enthused, so he takes his friend Isaac to help him wrangle in Paul like the wild stallion he is. They eventually find him at the most inconvenient of times while they're visiting the all-you-can-eat buffet. So not only did Paul take the truck, but he's doing something far worse in my opinion. He's keeping them from enjoying their gourmet crab legs. Paul misses the elevator and has to take the stairs to the 45th floor, where he thinks he'll be safe in, of all places, Amy's room. Danny and Isaac are racing up the stairs after Paul, and because I have a little something of an understanding of Danny's health, I'm praying that he doesn't drop dead of a heart attack here, that his arteries lined with Burger King's trademark chicken fat don't suddenly have a traffic jam. However, he does do better than Isaac, who's blowing chunks by the 25th floor. Honestly, it's so disgusting. That was a perfectly good crab he was eating, and now it's all gone to waste. After Paul gets caught and the truck keys are retrieved, you'd think it'd all be over by now. But no, because how can Danny refuse an opportunity to screw with Amy a little bit more? It's a pretty common thing that happens in this show. The worst thing you can imagine happens. While Amy is giving a presentation about her company, Danny crashes the whole thing by calling her out about the road rage incident. But then Isaac chimes in and says something even more horrifying.
X-Men is the best X-Men! Wolverine cannot be circumcised!
X-Men the First Class is the best, obviously. It's got the strongest script, the most stylish direction, and it's got Kevin Bacon. Come on, Isaac! But he gets dragged out before someone can bring him to his senses. Speaking of the topics of road and rage, there's another confrontation at the season's end that culminates in Danny and Amy driving off a cliff, which is basically like another day in the life for them at this point. By the way, I do love the shot of them driving off the edge from so far away. I think it's kind of a metaphor for how their pathetic feud has like derailed their entire lives, and now they're hurtling into the unknown in fear. It's a very impactful scene. It introduces us to the last episode of the season, which is essentially Danny and Amy versus Wild. Shit's really hitting the fan at this point, let me tell ya. For example, Danny's phone screen is all scratched up. That's gonna be like $220 to fix. And he's not using it in dark mode at night? What a savage. Amy awakens on the ground amidst the bushes. She's battered, bruised, and stiff from the night before. God only knows how many bug bites she's got. God only knows how many insects were crawling into her mouth as she was lying there, drooling into the desert sand. There's scorpions out there, man. Or I guess now protein. After Danny and Amy begrudgingly team up together to help each other survive this wretched wasteland just off the side of a public road, they eat some elderberries. Or rather, what they think are elderberries. Next thing you know, their minds are warped. For example, Amy hallucinates Danny disappearing, then reappearing in a completely different place, and a broken branch being a hand pistol. Danny, in his delirium, openly questions why people of Asian descent are lactose intolerant. Crazy wild stuff is going on left and right here. At one point, Danny vomits and marvels at how pretty it looks, comparing it to Skittles. That's when you know you're circling the drain. They also spend another night outside sleeping with no coverings whatsoever. And just thinking about that gets me all kinds of uncomfortable. If you've ever been camping before, you know how extraordinary an invention the bed is. I'm actually pretty sure it's what's allowed humans to evolve into what they are today. Not luck, not ancient aliens descending from the third star in Orion's belt to bestow upon us their advanced extraterrestrial knowledge. It was being able to get more than 45 minutes of sleep sleep at night. But it also all culminates into something truly beautiful, because it's during this time that Danny and Amy start to realize they're not actually that different from each other. They've both got careers that stress them the heck out. They both eat Burger King chicken sandwiches when they're sad. They're both one bad day away from becoming a psychopathic killer. The season ends with the two of them helping each other out of the wilderness, limping alongside each other to safety, until George shoots Danny. Then the season really ends with Danny recovering in the hospital room, Amy lying alongside him, waiting for him to wake up. The last shot is my absolute favorite in the entire season because it shows you just enough to end the story satisfactorily while also letting you know Danny's gonna be okay. I literally can't imagine anything better, which is why I'm pretty annoyed over what the director had to say about Beef's future. Because the second season hasn't officially been announced as I'm recording this, maybe this won't be an issue, but the show's creator seems definitely open to it and has gone on record saying that he sees lots of ways for Danny and Amy to continue, and that he's already got like 3 seasons of the show mapped out in his head already. But how? This show is about beef, and it's about their beef with each other. Is he going to make more beef for them to argue about? Because if so, it kind of cheapens the ending for this. Should I really root for Danny and Amy if they're just going to go at each other's throats again? While I guess that if you technically think about it, 24 hours in the Californian outback really is kind of a short time to resolve all your differences, and that there could still conceivably be friction between the two should they go forward. This is also a show where crows talk to each other, and plot coordinated attacks on humans that piss them off. What I'm trying to say is that I can buy it if this is the end. Anything more would feel contrived and forced. This is digging into a major peeve that I have with the entertainment industry, and I'm so not original in my thoughts on this, but I like this show so much I'm going to talk about it anyway. The endless sequels, the endless prequels, the endless spin-offs. I hate it all. I learned recently that the character Rey Skywalker is going to have a new Star Wars trilogy completely centered around her. But is that not what we just did? I'd rather have a trilogy centered around Babu Frick. So underdeveloped and so much potential. Give him 3 movies. It'd at least be different. There's more Jurassic movies coming, even though there's already 6 and they're all basically the same story. People meet dinosaurs. Dinosaurs don't like people. Dinosaurs get a fine dining experience. And perhaps the worst of all offenders, Toy Story 5. Think about that for a minute. Toy Story 5. Does it really come to this, guys? I get that it's hard to make stuff that people want to watch, and I get that this is an industry that's ultimately there to make money, but it comes at a cost. That cost being the impact and memorability of the original piece. Beef is such a dramatic and at times hilarious piece that has so much nuance and layer to its story. Yes, it's a story about stress, and it does a great job making the viewer experience that emotion, but it's also about confronting your inner demons, being afraid of going unloved, and the sacrifices we often make for the people we care about. It's executed amazingly, paced great, and it has an ending that feels earned. All things which are very difficult to achieve. Why risk ruining the memory of that with a lackluster second season? Why bury Amy and Danny's story under other people's stories about having beef, making theirs feel trite and repetitive? Less is more, because more makes you appreciate things less. And that's Beef for you. Go watch it. It is a terrific show. Now I'm gonna go get some food, because saying beef over and over, seeing beef over and over, and thinking about beef over and over has made me crave a turkey sandwich.